Hello again. I'm bringing you another hip hop albums ranking. Before I get into that, I just want to discuss the my previous additional video that I released the other day. The first one shot in my new place that I live in my other room. This one's taking place in this room, which I'm going to try out just to see how this works from here. It certainly feels like the best one in terms of being able to get into a good position, to be able to be with the camera and lighting and things like that. Unfortunately, it's right next to a train station, so bear with me a little bit on that. But we'll just give it a see and hope this works out like this. We'll see. So, I'm going to be looking in this episode at Ludacris, and that will certainly be Ludacris. So Mr. Chris has been around for 20 years or so now. He was kind of first rose to prominence in the early 2000s, one of the first major rappers out of Atlanta. So going Dirty South for this video, just to give you something different. And again, another rapper who might be more well known for his film work these days than his music. His music has slowed down considerably over the past decade or so. But he's always been a very entertaining and charismatic rapper, so that's why it's a good reason to look at the work he's put out. He's certainly been very prolific. He's had 8 albums, studio albums in total. So let's go through them. We are starting, so at number 8, we're looking at Battle of the Sexes, which came out March 2010. And it was initially supposed to be a collaborative album between himself and former label mate Shauna, who rose to prominence alongside him as like the female parts to some of his older hit singles, which I will discuss future in this episode. Due to label issues, she ended up signing with T-Pain, which I believe prevented her from being able to fully perform on the album as a joint project. So it just became a solo album from Ludacris. The Battle of the Sexes title remains, and this was supposed to be a way for Ludacris to kind of look at gender differences and kind of look at things from a male aspect and a female aspect with a variety of guests. Shauna is on the album a couple of times, uncredited, but there's other guests as well, male and female, about the same amount, both sides, which is a nice attempt to sort of look at gender politics, and the album as a whole kind of just looks into club songs, sexy club songs. They all kind of generally fit that sort of mould. There's very safe songs to perform for a major hip hop star, and but the fact that there's kind of the same amount of male and female guests is nice to get different voices on there to look at things. It does kind of mean that on certain songs there's a limited female presence, with both Ludacris being the male voice as well as a male guest rapper or guest vocalist and a female. So it kind of negates the whole looking at things from different perspectives. And this kind of runs through quite a lot of the tracks. There are nice attempts at looking at things, such as Hey Ho with Lil Kim and Fate Wilson, which looks at the whole if men sleep around their players, women sleep around their horse discussion, which kind of undercuts its own arguments by having Fate Wilson do the verse of a pimp, and just other little bits and pieces within Luda and Kim's verses, which kind of undercut their own arguments slightly. Same for Battle of Sexes Radio, which is just a very bland look at relationships, and particularly sort of the arguments between men and women about men not being able to get enough money to provide for their women, and men not feeling respected enough by the women. It's all fairly trite stuff, but on the songs that do work better, the ones which take a better look at the relationship divides, the gender divides. The songs that Shauna actually does appear on, in particular, do this quite well, to be able to hear her voice in the discussion. Also, songs which aren't so heavily bogged down in these ideas, and so don't need to pursue them so well. Everybody Drunk with Little Scrappy, which was originally a Shauna song, but Little Scrappy fits on there well enough. He's a very underrated rapper. I Know You Got a Man with Flo Rida and Essa Dean, which is a nice, lively song. Other than that, the lead singles, How Low and My Chick Bad, aren't particularly interesting. The remixes, which are here on the deluxe version, are better, as they bring in some more vocals from different artists, such as Sierra, Eve. Drew Hill is saved for a bonus track for some reason, and there's also a bonus track where Ludacris tells us all about sort of sexting and Tiger Woods, so that kind of dates the album a bit. So generally speaking, it's not too offensive a project, but it also comes across as quite bland in places due to some of the issues in the production of it, I believe. And if it had actually been a Ludacris and Shauna joint production, it may have transpired a bit better. So number 7, and the album before, Theatre of the Mind, which, so this was end of 2008. The concept behind this one, kind of taking the idea from Ludacris's transition into Hollywood, into movies, tries to make every song a scene in a film, and so all of his guests are co-stars. So when Rick Ross appears on the album, when Chris Brown appears on the album, when T-Pain appears on the album, it's all co-starring this artist, which is fine. The scenes of the album just pretty much tell the same sort of the same sort of stories that songs in mainstream hip hop generally do at this point. There's nothing particularly groundbreaking on the album. There's a nice collaboration with Nas and Jay-Z, looking at hip hop and their legacy, which works fairly well. Bringing on T.I. for one of their first major collaborations together in I Wish You Would. And bringing on The Game and Willie North Pole for Call Up the Homies, which brings in more of a West Coast banger flavour, which gives the album something a bit different to look at. Tracks like these help elevate the album up from the sort of just general club street songs that we get a lot of on the album, and women songs as well. So other than that, Chris Rock appears to help out with Everybody Hates Chris, to help with the Hollywood connection, as does Ving Rhames, who narrates Southern Gangsters. Let's say, other than these little highlights of things being slightly different, it's not enough of a change for an overall album to make much of it that memorable. I'm just trying to remember things about it myself, which just goes to show. With lead singles, what Them Girls Like, with Chris Brown and Sean Garrett, which is a sort of general paint by numbers female club song. One More Drink with T-Pain, which is a slightly better female club song. Let's see, a lot of the same recurring themes throughout. So a lot of these scenes, these cinematic scenes, aren't too different. So that's why it's a bit tricky to rate this album any higher, in my opinion. So I will have some of these actual albums with me at some point, I promise you. Number 6, it's tricky. This is Ludacris, which is the most recent of his albums. So this came out 2015, but exactly 5 years after Battle of the Sexes. It's kind of a way of re-establishing Ludacris as a prominent rapper. As such, a lot of the early tracks are made up of bar songs, just showing off his punchlines, which, Ludacris has always been well known for his punchlines, always has some great one-liners, and a lot of these opening songs showcase that very well. Even brings on Big Crit later on for a bit of a lyrical sparring between the two of them, which works very well. But then, as the album goes on, we get some more introspective songs. Ocean Skies with Cousin Monica, which looks at his father's battle with alcoholism and subsequent death not long after Ludacris won his Grammy for Release Therapy, which we'll be getting onto soon, which we've never sort of really heard him discuss before, so it's nice to see him opening up about that. And towards the end as well, with the tracks Charge It to the Game and It's My World, which kind of look again at his position in hip-hop, with some great cinematic, almost feeling production from Just Blaze, which really lift the track up. If you have the deluxe edition as well, we get some even more standout tracks. Some songs which were released initially on the Burning Bridges EP, which then became added as bonus tracks, and they all stand up really, really strongly as tracks, a lot better than some of the other songs on the actual album, so you really ought to have the deluxe version. In particular, the closing songs in my life with John Legend, which is a nice jazzy production about, again, Ludacris's troubles with fame and his position in hip-hop again. And following that, the song Burning Bridges, Jason Aldean, which probably is the angriest that Ludacris has sounded, certainly in a long time. Just looking at his relationships with other people and the betrayal that he sometimes feels from them, and how that they've burnt bridges with each other and aren't affiliated with each other or anything like that anymore. A very strong Alex the Kid's production behind it, which helps elevate it up even more. And again, I just say, is the angriest that Ludacris has sounded in quite some time. So it gives nice to see the range of emotions on a project like this, no album has come out since that album. So it's a great. I say it's quite a lot for the final albums that have been released recently, but it would certainly make for a great final album. Ludacris being very busy with his film work these days, it would make sense for him to just call it a day after an album like that. But we'll just have to see how we go. So number 5, we are going to look at the Red Light District. Yay, the album I actually purchased. Now, this album, end of 2004, came as sort of a transitional period for Ludacris. We were kind of moving out of the early zany Ludacris and into the more mature, serious Ludacris. So the album is kind of a bit of a mixture of both. We get songs like Number One Spots, which uses Austin Powers iconography throughout it, because Austin Powers was big at the time. That's basically the reason, and because the sample in there as well. And we get some more upbeat tracks as well. The Potion with Timbaland. Timbaland produces a couple of tracks, the intro as well. We get Put Your Money with DMX helping out on the chorus. Little fun gambling track. The lead single, Get Back, which is a fun, if not particularly imaginative, song about being angry and people going away from him. But we do get as well some more. We get soon after that, in the middle of the album, Child of the Night with Nate Dogg, which uses a beautiful Tina Marie sample. The two of them work very well together, have great chemistry. Nate's always very good on choruses. Ludacris looking at his childhood, growing up with his mum as a single parent, and things like this, and how he's been how his upbringing has made him who he is today. Towards the end of the album, we get some of the more slower, mellow, reflective songs as well, such as Hopeless, 2 Miles an Hour. We end with Virgo, a nice collaboration with him and Nas, which appears on Nas's Streets of Cyber album as well. A fun collaboration between the two of them. There's not a lot else to the project outside of the sort of general club songs, but as I say, it's more of a transitional album, so it's Ludacris trying to showcase his more mature side while showcasing his club nature, his crazy nature as well. And again, he's always a charismatic person, so there's not a lot on the album that ever lulls at all. Even the tracks that aren't necessarily the greatest at least have a bit of oomph to them to keep them upbeat and keep them lively. Spur of the Moment, which appears right in the middle of the album, is a strong highlight. More West Coast feeling collaboration between him and DJ Quick. Following after the only skit on the album, which is an amusing skit about Ludacris phoning a girl and the girl's father trying to get involved. I mean, the skits kind of stopped around this kind of time on Ludacris's albums, but this is one of the final good Ludacris skits. So definitely want to check that one out. And so on to number 4, we get the debut, Back for the First Time, which is its main selling point was just showcasing Ludacris as a new rising voice in hip hop, particularly in Southern hip hop. and just showcasing his charismatic punchline style. Not a lot of the songs sort of go beyond that, but for what they were, certainly as a refreshing voice in hip hop, they all generally stack up fairly well, particularly with the production, the more like computer esque production for Game Got Switched. And we get Southern Hospitality, produced by Pharrell, which has a brilliant intro where all the instruments are built up gradually as they go, and same for the outro where the instruments are taken out. It's nice little production things like that, which I really enjoy. The song itself is one of the major highlights of the track, of the album. Ludacris employing one of his repeated word verses, where he'll use the same words to talk about particular things like Southern, Cadillac. If you know the verses, you'll understand what I mean by that. And Ludacris is, particularly at this time when he was first coming out, he knew how to make a very catchy song. The hooks, while some of them may not have aged particularly well, are still very fun to sing along to. They're all very memorable. What's Your Fantasy with Shauna, who's again introduced their chemistry together, even though Shauna's on the chorus for the main version of the song. The remix, she showcases herself as a rapper, and very underrated as a female rapper, as a rapper in general, as well as getting Foxy Brown and Trina in it as well, to showcase more of a female side to a very sexual song. And closing off with Fat Rabbit, produced by Timbaland, which one of the earlier songs to have come out, as it appeared on Tim's bio a couple of years before, and felt as a very Timbaland, a very atypical Timbaland beat for that time. Very dark but kind of funky, and very bass heavy. So all in all, while it's not necessarily the strongest, due to the fact that the content never sort of strays from the general punchline, sex and drinking kind of lyric content, Ludacris still showcased himself as a top voice, particularly against the more established Southern veterans who appear on the album in the form of UGK and Pastor Troy, who Ludacris certainly holds his own against, and in some cases, Pastor Troy showcases just how much of a stronger voice he can be in Southern hip hop. So that's that for number 4. And so number 3, we are going to the phone again quickly. We are going 2006 release Therapy. So again, talking about the transition between the zany club Ludacris and the mature Ludacris, this was certainly a way to try and showcase more of the mature Ludacris, with the idea being the album would have the therapeutic side at the beginning and the more of a release on the second half of the album, so more getting things off his chest in terms of tracks like War with God, where he's kind of goes at no particular person as he claims to, but it's definitely a discussion about rappers and their content, whether it's talking about himself as a rapper or going at an unnamed person. We then, towards the end of the album, we get two of the stronger tracks in terms of Slap, which is a very dark sounding Runners production, talking about the way of the world at the moment, about how people were struggling in Black America in particular at a time, with a president who wouldn't do a lot for them in the form of George Bush, and so much has changed since then. Then following that up, we get the more mellow but still very reflective "Runaway Love" with Mary J. Blige, where he looks at a bunch of stories of young women, young girls being abused by people around them. So from when you've built up a career with tracks like Ho and Area Codes and Move Bitch, it's certainly refreshing to hear Ludacris looking at women's issues in this way, and predating the songs later on with Battle of Sexes. This is probably the best he's ever dealt with issues like that. So that's why this album helps it helps the album overall to be a very strong project. Looking at prison as well, with rappers who are at that point and in some cases still are incarcerated, Beanie Siegel, C Murder, Pimp C. Earlier with the more therapeutic songs, we get End of the Night with Bobby Valentino, Moneymaker with Pharrell. Pharrell produces the follow-up track Girls Gone Wild as well. Grew Up a Screw Up with Young Jeezy, which uses a Biggie sample for the chorus. R. Kelly appears on Woozy as well, which is a nice... is a certainly therapeutic song in the sense of the beat of it. Ludacris still has his punchlines, to be sure, on tracks like Mouths to Feed and Almost Satisfaction. Is one of the better showcases of his punchline based style and his more mature style, so he can be taken more seriously than he perhaps was on some of his older projects. Not every song on there is a standout classic, even though they do generally feel above a lot of the later album tracks he would make. Closing song, Freedom of Preach, isn't particularly interesting, but it's kind of there as a nice closer, I suppose. Other than that, it's a strong album and a nice way of showcasing more than one side of Ludacris to show that he's more multi-dimensional. So, number two. I mean, the top three are quite tricky for me. They're all, particularly the top two, very, very close. But number two, I'm going Chicken and Beer. Now, this was 2003. This was kind of like really peak Ludacris. He got a number one single out of this album with Stand Up. It was his first number one album in the States as well. It probably has the best set of opening tracks of a Ludacris album. So before Stand Up, we get Summer Fried Intro and Blow It Out, both of which are very, very banging tracks. Ludacris employing some of his rapid fire flow on the intro before just making a really aggressive sound for Blow It Out. And a lot of the other opening tracks after that as well. Splash Waterfalls is a very nice sort of general sex song. Hard Times and Diamond in the Back have a bit more of an introspective feel, looking at Ludacris's upbringing and just the world around him at that time in the tracks. And we managed to get some more of the punchline based Ludacris in Screwed Up and hip hop quotables. After this, which is kind of why I think this album is a bit lower, number two, the second half of the album kind of dips a bit. There's nothing really bad about the songs after this, but a lot of them are very much the same material that we're used to hearing from Ludacris and from commercial hip hop in general. P-popping, Hoes in My Room. Again, none of these tracks are necessarily bad. They just, have aged particularly well, but they're certainly not the strongest tracks on the album when taking into consideration a lot of songs that come before. We have on this version of the album we have a couple of bonus tracks. Act a Fool, which was from the Too Fast Too Furious soundtrack, which is a very nice high octane movie song, as well as a remix to Southern Hospitality featuring UK rappers Maxwell D and Miss Dynamite, which is nice to hear their voices on a track like this. So there's definitely great highlights on there, and again, his club songs and his more serious songs. But yeah, again, the second half of the album just kind of gets a bit unmemorable and falls flat a bit in comparison to the very strong, stellar first half of the album. So, number one, Word of Mouth. Now, again, there's a lot of content on the album which isn't perhaps the most appropriate, but Ludacris brings such charisma to everything that he says on the album. It's hard not to be impressed by everything that he does say, and again, in terms of punchlines, you don't get a lot better, particularly for Ludacris, than this album. Look at some of the older tracks, Cry Babies, Go to Sleep, Coming to America, all have very strong punchlines and rhyme schemes for rhyming the syllables of the punchlines together, which we didn't really hear a lot of, particularly from southern rappers at that time. A lot of the major hits of Ludacris's career are on this album in terms of Roll Out, Area Codes, Move Bitch, Saturday. They all stand up fairly well as enjoyable club bangers, and Ludacris again just sounds amazing on all of them. Roll Out with his speedy delivery, and Area Codes, which again with Nate Dogg, the two of them again delivering it. Nate Dogg with the catchy hook and chorus. Ludacris doing his Ho wordplay to a better effect than Ho, which had been released on the previous album. And again, he does still take some time to deliver some variety on the album. Growing Pains, which appears after Area Codes, another childhood-based track with Lil Fate Wilson taking a lot of the verses on board, and Cold Outside, which closes the track, the album, brings a very chilly, frosty nature to the track, as it would imply from the title, as a way of closing the album off. And again, there's every sort of track on here. Three Key Things with Jagged Edge and Twister. We applying the speedy delivery to meet up with Twister's rapid fire style. The smooth Keep It on the Hush with Jazzy Faye. Everything on this album pretty much just bangs and is so it just exudes charisma. You can't help but feel yourself being captivated by everything on there. In terms of there's the bonus track Block Lockdown, which then leads into hidden track Welcome to Atlanta, which is another big hit for him and Jermaine Dupri, and still stands up really well, and particularly Ludacris's verse stands out so much on the song itself. It kind of takes over the song. Just, top to bottom, nothing on here is too, low energy. Everything delivers in the style that Ludacris intended at that time and got very popular for. So it kind of has to be considered the better album out of these ones. And I say that top three is very tricky because all of those three albums are very, very strong throughout them, but I think Word of Mouth is the one where every track delivers in a strong way throughout, so it's simply the most cohesive of the albums. So, and that is why I'll take Word of Mouth for the number one. I will see you again very soon, I'm sure.